Hi, I'm Erik Linask. I'm here in the TMC newsroom, and I'm talking today with Gil Zimmermann, who is the CEO and co-founder of a company called Aprigo. Gil, welcome, and thanks for joining me.
Thank you, Erik. Nice to be here.
So for those of our viewership who may not be familiar with Aprigo yet, maybe a great place to start is give me a little overview on who Aprigo is and what you do.
All right, perfect. So Aprigo provides a unified data dashboard for small and medium enterprises to basically see all of their unstructured data on-premise and in the cloud and take back control of security and costs and other day-to-day data management tasks in a very simple, easy-to-use, visually rich manner. And we happen to deliver that with a SaaS IT management application, so there's really nothing for the user to install in terms of servers or databases and storage. It's really just an IT management application that's delivered over the web.
What do you mean by unstructured data?
Unstructured data is a fancy term for files. It's 80 to 90% of customers' data. It's anywhere from your financial statements to source code to Word documents, PowerPoint presentations, video files. Most data sits in files, both on-premise, whether that's on a laptop or desktop or in a network share, or even in the cloud with infrastructure like Google Docs or Box.net, Dropbox, etc.
So what are some of the attributes of all of that unstructured data that create inefficiencies or can potentially cost companies money?
Yeah. So actually, when we started out, and still to this day, when we talk to customers, kind of the recurring problems that you find with unstructured data, first and foremost, is that there's a lot of it, and it's doubling almost year over year. It's very dynamic, and unlike any other IT asset, it's the only IT asset in an organization where every employee in the company literally is a cook in the kitchen. They're asked to create documents, share those documents, move them, delete them, copy them, and it's very, very difficult for IT to keep up with that. And they run into, probably the highest likelihood problems are data that gets exposed to people that it shouldn't be exposed to, or not accessible to the people that it should be accessible to. Running out of disk space, which basically is a business disruption where people can't create more documents or save documents. And it really centers in around those two core problems around security, securing your very sensitive business asset, as well as the cost component of just keeping this storage under control in terms of something that's multiplying year over year, and every employee in the company is contributing to that multiplication factor, and you really don't want to slow them down because you want to be able to enable the business to function and be competitive. So you want to be able to let people play in the kitchen, but not start too many fires.
So taking one of those issues at a time, when you're talking about the storage element, clearly you're not talking about simply adding storage. You talked about the cost of that. So are you saying that a lot of this data that's taking up that space is not necessary?
Absolutely. So most of the data that sits there today doesn't have to be there to begin with, and it's a very difficult task for an IT director, IT manager, or the IT department in general to really isolate that data, the data that matters. And there's an inherent gap between the custodian of the data, which is IT, and the business owner that understands the value of that data. So there's a lot of data that's orphaned because it's employees that are no longer with the company, or data that's garbage data that shouldn't have been put there to begin with, where there's people's vacation photos or documents that are kept around that shouldn't be. A lot of that data needs to be moved off, and keeping it around is very costly for the company, not just because of the primary storage cost of the disk space, but also because you're replicating that data, you're backing it up, and everything you're running is running on top of that data, whether it's antivirus or security measures. It's just extra baggage to just carry around with you that you don't need.
So what kind of things can you do, and specifically what kind of things does Aprigo enable companies to do to identify that unnecessary or unwanted data?
So the unwanted data is kind of the easiest way to find Aprigo. And the first thing we do is, in a matter of minutes, show you where you can save dollars. We do that very easily. We basically present you with a very rich visual interface. A given terabyte has about 5 million files. So it's very difficult to understand where your data is and analyze it. And we provide a a very rich visual interaction model that customers can see where their important data is, see where the data that they shouldn't be keeping around is, whether it's old data or media data that doesn't need to be there, and then understand what they need to do to get rid of that data. The hard part is understanding where that data is and analyzing it. And we do that both for the cost as well as the security aspect. So very quickly, we'll show you in a matter of minutes where your exposed data is. Going in and changing those permissions, we'll show you what you need to do, and how to do that is very simple. It's really understanding what to run it on. It's the difficult part, and that's where we come in.
So how are you able to identify, with so many, you talked about every user effectively being a good cook in the kitchen, but how are you able to identify which users might need certain files or certain data?
So end user enablement and access management is a huge challenge for any business. Large organizations have access to a lot more resources, and they'll buy dedicated systems and install servers and databases like we talked about. The small and medium-sized enterprises, for them, they really need a point-and-click interface where they can select the user and see what they have access to, or vice versa, select a share or a resource and see all the people that have access to it. And the way we do that is not by a pure infrastructure perspective. We look at not only the file system information, but also Active Directory and directory services that has the organizational structure. It has the people, the groups that they belong to, and typically users belong to more than one group. And we provide an effective view, so you can actually see who has access to your data as opposed to see what the permissions on a file are.
You keep talking about the small and medium-sized enterprise. What's the difference? What's the difference between what an SME needs and larger businesses?
Right. So one of the things that's fundamental and it's kind of universal for any business is that business people care about their data, and IT cares about their data just as much as any organization does, whether you're small or large. It's your business's data, and your business cannot function without it. And it's important for you to do all those daily data management tasks. What stands out, there's really this void in the medium and small enterprise space between solutions that are overly complicated, overly expensive, and just take too long to deploy, and the consumer / very small business solutions that just don't cut it for an organization that has 50, 100, up to 1,000 employees. They have a lot of the same challenges that the enterprise does. They still need to function. Sometimes they're even subject to regulatory and compliance requirements, but they have nowhere near the budget or the time or the headcount to deal and dedicate staff to these tasks. They basically have 20 hats to wear and have a different fire to put out every day. And we make it very easy for them to put out those fires and keep them out. We'll not only help them put out their exposure and cost fires, but we'll keep track of it on an ongoing basis and send them alerts when data gets exposed or when savings potentials are found, so that they can offload some of that headache to somebody else.
So when you're talking about, obviously you're doing a certain amount of data tracking and updating, is this a real-time environment that you're talking about?
So no. So we scan on a weekly basis, and by default, and the customer can change that. We will provide real-time scanning in the future, but today it's really a 90-10 split. So we'll provide 90% of the functionality for 10% of the cost. And most of our customers aren't even asking for that additional 10% because it's good enough for them to be able to keep track of it. They don't want to go through the headache of having to deploy a DLP solution or a very sophisticated environment where they're actually installing agents all over the place and changing the behavior of their end users. They want something simple and effective where they can get 90% of the value without breaking the bank and without going through huge undertaking of weeks.
Sure. So why did you guys decide to deploy using a cloud model?
So obviously we're drinking the cloud Kool-Aid, and we're big believers, and our entire business is running on cloud and SaaS-based applications. It's not just the wave of the future; it's here already today, and we're seeing more and more business applications deployed in the cloud and SaaS being leveraged. And we felt it was a natural progression for the IT organizations to adopt the same strategy and enable them to offload the headaches of the infrastructure and focus where they really provide value, and that is enablement of the business through technology and through information, and that's where we focus. So for the IT organization to offload the time it takes to set up an IT management application and offload the cost of the storage, the servers, and the software, and subscribe to a service that gives them that capability just makes pure sense.
Are there potential questions that come up from customers, especially regarding security, but other issues as well when you're talking about accessing their data in a cloud environment, some potentially sensitive data?
Absolutely. So security is a concern. We address it in several different tacts. The first one is pure technical. Obviously, we only touch metadata. So we don't actually open up the files. We don't take a copy, unlike online backup solutions that will copy all of your data to someone else's site. We'll only look at the metadata, and even then we'll take an aggregated view of that metadata. That's all we really need to be able to provide you with the rich functionality that we do. That being said, most organizations already have SaaS and cloud-based solutions in IT. They're doing online backups. They have business applications that are deployed in the cloud, and we run our cloud infrastructure on Amazon, which is a SAS 70-2 certified data center. Amazon's pretty good at running their data center. We built our system on Amazon because it's a multi-tiered, multi-tenancy SaaS application, and we encrypt all traffic to and from. And the only person that can gain access even to that metadata is the end user. It's their metadata. We don't touch it.
Generally speaking, what are you seeing in terms of response to or acceptance of the SaaS model?
So we're seeing very strong response. Even companies that have never heard of SaaS are sometimes very open to it because it makes sense for them at the price level and at the speed at which we can provide value. And typically we do find companies that are already leveraging or looking to leverage SaaS in IT. So there's very strong adoption for the SaaS model and for cloud infrastructure in general. IT sees it as an opportunity to be able to focus on what matters, and that's the business use of the actual business assets, the data. And if they can deploy servers and applications and provide value to the answers to the business in a matter of minutes, as opposed to having to spend time building out additional infrastructure, which costs more money, that they're all for it.
Excellent. Now, you did mention really quickly, I wanted to touch on too, you did mention potentially going into a real-time environment in the future, but that's not necessarily something, given what the product is designed to do. That's not something that customers necessarily need, right. Is looking at that data in real time.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. We don't hear customers asking for it. What we will provide is a real-time audit trail. So as opposed to a proactive countermeasure to prevent people from moving data, we're really about enabling the business to continue to function and not re-educating the end users. But we'll be able to provide customers with a real-time audit trail, if you will, of who's actually accessed the data, not just who is able to access the data today. And we're finding more and more businesses that have hybrid environments where they have data that's both on-premise as well as moving some of their data into the cloud, and sometimes it's vice versa. So providing them with a unified view is tremendously beneficial. And on the cloud-based data, we can provide that access trail today.
Excellent. We've been talking here in the TMC newsroom with Aprigo's Gil Zimmermann. Gil, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you very much, Erik.